Welcome to the Life Leadership Podcast with myself, Leila Singh, all things coaching, career, and personal branding. This podcast is for ambitious career professionals like you, wanting to create a life of choice and freedom, to be, do, and have more through overcoming limitations, to develop new perspectives and insights, and to redefine your success, be that in work, health, relationships, and so much more. Hi there, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Live with Leila. My name is Leila Singh, and I'm an executive career and personal brand coach. And I work with career professionals, typically in the technology industry, who are looking to overcome their limitations so that they can uncover their true potential and create new possibilities. Also are showing up as the best versions of themselves, what I call life leadership. So what is today's topic? Well, it is, what role are you playing in creating your daily experiences? Now, why am I asking this question? I'm asking it because oftentimes we fail to recognize that in fact we ourselves, us, are responsible for our day-to-day experiences, our outcomes, and our results. And here's the thing, our view of the world around us is directly influenced by our past experiences, our beliefs, our values, our preferences, and also our general outlook on life. So, for example, where one person sees an opportunity, another may see it as a problem. Where one person sees something as growth, another may see it as potential failure. Where somebody sees a good thing, another may see it as bad. So we all have our views of the world. That's what makes us interesting. It makes us different. It makes the world an interesting place to be in. However, if we want to have a better experience in our life, whether that's in our personal life, our relationships, our career, our health, it all comes back to which lens we choose to see the world through. And the way in which we then choose to react, or more importantly, respond. And yes, you heard that right. It's about how we choose to respond to any given situation. So we have the choice here about the lens that we look at the world through and how we choose to respond to what we observe from that. So let me know if this makes sense, what resonates with you, what areas of your life you are struggling with, where actually perhaps this could be really helpful for you. Here's the thing, we create an internal representation of the world around us. And this is our reality. And we base this on the way that we choose to filter our information and our experiences. Because here's the thing, we have all of this information coming at us all day, every day, pretty much 24/7. And this can be from conversations, from interactions, from the media, from social media, from Google, the internet, everywhere. We're bombarded by information. And we have to process that. Our poor little brain has to process all of that information in some way. So what we then do is we naturally delete some of that information, we distort some of it, and we generalize some of that information, right? And if you are familiar with NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, you'll be familiar with the philosophy around deleting, distorting, and generalizing information, because we all process information differently. So how you experience one situation or a circumstance will be very different to how I experience it. Okay, so this is where you got to kind of check in with yourself and look at, okay, how am I choosing to experience this? What's the lens I'm looking at this through? And if it's not giving you a great experience or a great outcome, then how can you look at it differently? How do you choose to respond in any given moment? So with all of this, what we mean here is that we get to, or what I wanted to share with you rather, is that we get to influence our world at large. We get to change our filters and in turn, our day-to-day experiences. And I'd like to give you a couple of examples of that I have experienced personally. Why? Because you may be thinking, well, it's easy for me to sit there and preach all of this or talk about all of this theoretically, hypothetically, but what is the reality? The reality is, for me, that I have experienced over and over again, if I'm in any situation and the experience I'm having is not good, if it is really causing me a lot of anger and frustration and everything just feels like it's going wrong, often that's coming from me. That's coming from the way that I'm showing up in the world, the energy that I'm coming to something with, the internal dialogue, the feelings, emotions that I've got within me that are therefore influencing energetically what is happening around me and in front of me, and the way that other people respond to me. And this is really important to understand and to slow down to, because how people respond to us is a reflection of us. It's a reflection of the way that we're showing up in the world. So, as I said, I'd like to share with you a couple of examples, real life examples that I have experienced to kind of demonstrate to you how we can influence things to create a better experience from something that's more pleasant, enjoyable, more successful, more fruitful, more fulfilling. So the first one I want to share with you is an experience of moving house. Now, as you may be aware, moving house is deemed to be one of the most stressful experiences that we could possibly go through. And here's the thing with that. When I moved to where I'm living today, and this was several years ago, so when I moved here, I even had people commenting to me at the time that they were so surprised at how seamless and how effortless the whole experience was for me. Everything just fell into place. And yes, you can say it was luck. You could say it was, I don't know, the timing or something, I don't know. But for me, a big part of it was how I was showing up to the entire situation. And that's something for you to start to recognize for yourself. So when I talk about this, think about how you can apply this in your world. This isn't about me and my story or my example. This is about, okay, what can you take from this and apply it to how you are showing up, who you are being, and how you are responding to things that are happening around you. So just as a quick overview, I'm going to go into a second example in a moment, which will go in at a slightly deeper level. But this example here of a house move was honestly just so easy. I even remember the day that I was moving. I was still working that day. This is when I was in my career still. And I had conference calls that day, and I was doing the conference calls, walking around in the garden. It was a lovely summer's day in May, and the guys were packing up in the house around me and loading things onto the truck and so forth. So I could just get on with my work, and they were getting it all done. But here's the thing. It wasn't only that. It was the fact that once they'd loaded up and they headed off, I just needed to check around. I got into my car. I drove. It wasn't a far distance either. It was a couple of miles, which probably helped. But when I turned up at my new place that I was moving into, again, everything was so effortless. I had booked in people to come and do various things. So the guy to change the locks, the BT guy to connect my phone and Wi-Fi, internet, sorry. And plumbers have been booked in because I had to get some things, fundamental things done in the flat immediately. So that, and everyone just showed up. There was a fourth person who's, I forget now, but there was 4 different sets of people that had to show up, as well as the delivery guys who were removal and delivery guys who were coming along with all my stuff to unload into the property. And everyone kind of showed up within the space of 30 minutes and got on with their jobs, and it all just went really, really well. And this is one example of something that happened it was very streamlined. Even from the point at which I identified the property, I went to view it, to actually moving in was within, I think, less than 8 weeks. And this was from a purchase, so going through all the legalities and so forth as well. So At the same time, I was able to contrast this with someone else that I knew who was moving house, who was having umpteen different challenges, and it dragged on and on and on. Now, yes, there are certain things that are outside of our control, and it's important to recognize that, but also to recognize how we are projecting our viewpoint, our thoughts onto the rest of the world, the things that are happening around us. So, for example, what I mean by that is, if we show up, for example, constantly cynical about a certain thing, like moving house, or it's bound to go wrong, it's bound to take months, it's bound to fall through, and all of these kind of things, guess what's going to happen? That very thing, because that's what we're focusing on. What we get, what we choose to focus on. So if we expect something not to work, or we expect it to be really, really difficult, or we expect that it will just go horribly wrong, then often it will, because that's what we're looking to find. And our brain looks for evidence to support our thoughts and our beliefs and what we focus on. So if we focus on something, we often get to experience it. The other side of that too is that when we have that energy behind something, so in other words, if we're, let's say we're not trusting, or we're cynical, or we're just like, oh, this kind of thing, or this kind of this person is this way, and therefore it's just going to be difficult, then that person will likely be that way and show up in that way with us, because it's a reflection of how we are behaving. And by the way, a lot of this is subconscious, it's beneath the radar, it's not in your face. But just think about this. When you show up in a situation, and let's say it's not the most positive energy that you're showing up in, let's say you are not trusting of somebody or a situation, or you've put a belief in your mind that this kind of person, whatever kind of person that is this way, in a negative way, then you're likely to get that experience with them, because energetically that's how you're showing up, and you will get a reflection of that to you. A quick example of this is a lady I met, this was a few years ago, at a panel event that I was attending, and after the event I went to mix with the audience and talk to them about their learnings from the panel discussion. And she actually said to me, you know, I love the way that you're so confident up there on stage, and so forth and so forth. And she was, you know, somebody who at that time was clearly lacking in her own self-confidence, and it showed up in the way that she simply carried herself and the way that she spoke. She was very quietly spoken, quite timid. And I shared with her a few simple tips at that time. In my mind, it was to help her to feel more confident in herself. And I shared this story many times because it really blew me away. The very next day, I was heading off on a flight to a work trip. I think it was to Poland. And, you know, as the flight is taking off and you have to switch your phones off, as I went to switch it off, I saw a message come in on LinkedIn. And she had messaged me to say, you know, great to meet you and thanks for the conversation. And by the way, I've gone into work today and I've taken on board all of the things that you shared, basically about how she was showing up and she was carrying herself and what she was focusing on. And what she actually said in her message was more than just her feeling confident. It was actually that she noticed, this was midday, right? So 3 hours maybe into her day of her showing up differently, she already could see how people were responding differently towards her. And that really blew my mind, because yes, I know this works, but to get such a quick response from somebody of them noticing the difference, for me, is incredibly powerful. And this is the thing, we can choose to show up as our best self tomorrow or this afternoon. We don't have to wait for anything. We just need to tune in with how we are showing up in the world, the thoughts that we're having, which are creating our emotions, our feelings, our energy, and how that is actually serving us or not serving us in the world. So again, thinking about how we can look at, for example, my house move actually just went okay. There was no major dramas. It all went as well as it could have been. It could not have gone any better from end to end. It was an amazing experience. So another example I want to just delve into here to show how this works is this. This was about 18 months ago, where my car broke down. So my car broke down. It was on the M40, driving back down I was coming back from Birmingham, I think, down to London. And I pulled over at the Oxford services, to just grab a drink. And I had to dial into a Zoom call. So I was going to set up the Zoom call on the phone and then just get back in the car and listen to this call. However, when I returned to my car to head home, the amber light was on for the engine. So I checked the manual to see what it was, and it said you need to get the car checked ASAP. So I thought, okay, I'll get home and then I'll deal with it and it'll be fine. The problem is that as I started the car to drive off, you could feel the engine was really pulling. It was really, really struggling. So I turned it off, I waited, I started again, and it was getting worse. It was like, I cannot take this car on the motorway. This is not going to get me home. At this point, I was on my way driving out of the services. So I pulled into the petrol station, which is just before you get back onto the motorway. So I pulled over there and I called the AA. And, this is one of those things. There's a situation where you can very quickly and easily get hacked off with it, get frustrated, get angry. I had a meeting that evening that I needed to get back home to join, which was quite important. But I just slowed down for a second. I thought, okay, I'm not going to get home in time for this meeting, so let me notify them. It wasn't a case of why does this always happen to me? It's like, okay, what can I do now to get this resolved? It was a beautiful sunny day. I was incredibly grateful that I was actually at the services and not stuck on the hard shoulder of the M40. I rang the AA and they said to me, oh, somebody be with you in 3 minutes. And I said, well, that can't be right because I'm at the services. I'm not aware that they necessarily hang out at the services. But she said, actually, someone's just pulling in there to drop off a car. So they can be with you in the next 3 minutes. Awesome. So that was my first win. What happened after that is so many different factors to this experience, right? So first of all, the AA turned up literally within 3 to 5 minutes. The AA man who came along it was his last job for the day. He was incredibly helpful and friendly. I took the time to get to know him and talk to him about his job and what he does. He identified that my car needed to be towed to a garage to address the engine issue. But I would need to wait for the tow truck who would then drop me home as well. He chose to keep me company. He could have just left and gone home and left me there, and it wouldn't have been an issue. But he chose to sit with me. We chatted. We talked about cars because I realized at this point I'm probably going to have to start looking at getting a new car. So we talked about our different opinions about what's good, what's bad in terms of cars. About an hour later, he rang back to find out the expected time of the tow truck. And they said, there's a bit of a delay, but actually what we'll do is we'll send a taxi to pick me up and drop me home. And here's the thing, I have extensive AA cover, but the one thing I don't have is cover for the service of providing a taxi to get you home. But the lady was very kind in the end. The guy put in a good word for me. So she said, sure, no problem, we'll send a taxi. So I got a taxi home. The car got towed. What happened next? They towed it to an approved garage. The garage then rang me the next morning to tell me that they can't fix it. I'd have to find another garage. I rang the AA and I actually explained that, I didn't get angry. I didn't get, rude or anything with them. I just said, look, this is the situation. This is your choice of garage. It's clearly not going to work. I've rang around 5 other garages who can't even book me in for about 3 to 5 weeks. I'd rang my dealership, the place that I've always taken my car for service, which was a BMW specialist. They said they could look at the car within a couple of days. So I said to the AA, please, can you take the car there? It's far away from where I live, back down the M4 in Wokingham. But I said, look, they can look at the car in a couple of days. Nowhere else can take it at the moment. I don't have a car. They agreed. They didn't argue about it. They agreed. The driver was amazing. He kept me updated all the way through. And the thing with this is, you don't always get great service from different companies. And I will shout out about the AA at this point, were absolutely phenomenal in their service. The driver who went and picked up the car, he rang me to let me know he picked it up. He said, I'll call you when I get to the destination. I'll let you know where I've left it and left the keys. So if they call in the morning, there's any issues, you know what I've done. Really, really good service. The garage then rang me in the morning and they said, actually, we can look at your car today. Awesome. So long story short, got inspected, told me they can do a temporary fix, but you need to change the car. Right? So I'm sharing all of this with you, but all of this, when I took a step back, worked out really, really well. It could have been so much worse. And I ended up having to get rid of a car. I didn't have a car for about 6 months because of the shortage of the electrical parts, if you remember, that still is an issue globally. So I had to wait a long time. But actually, the upside of that was I get to defer having to start paying for a new car. I got a load more steps and I was walking a lot more. I had Uber and Bolt on speed dial for my longer journeys. Which was great because it's giving, work to taxi drivers. And also I got to use the train more, which encouraged me to improve on my timekeeping, my planning, and packing lighter when I had to go on longer train journeys. So there was a lot of pluses for me personally that came out of the whole situation, even though I was gutted that my car packed up. But here's the thing. The point here is that I could have reacted very, very differently. I could have got angry when the car broke down. I could have been, given very little time or consideration to the AA man who came to deal with the situation. I could have got frustrated. I could have been rude to them, which is often what we do in a time when things aren't working for us. We start to get all worked up about it and angry and frustrated, and we take it out on the people around us. And guess what? We get a response back, which will be a reflection of that. But because I kind of took it in my stride, and I was looking for all the positives and the fact that it was a beautiful sunny day and I could just chill out, and okay, I can't make the meeting in the evening, but it's okay, meant that how I was showing up was a lot more, positive, and serving for the people around me. It was in a nicer way than I could have done otherwise. And I know prior to my own personal development, personal growth, I probably would have been that way. I would have been hacked off and frustrated and maybe not talked to the AA driver nicely, etc., and then argued with them when the garage said they couldn't fix the car and that kind of thing. But I didn't, because I know that I would get a reflection back of that, of how I behave, of how I show up. And I didn't blame. I just went with the process of what I had to do. So I didn't take the situation, the circumstances out on the people around me. I didn't blame. I didn't get into massive arguments or disagreements with the parties involved, even when there was a bit of an issue with them having taken it to one of their garages that couldn't deal with it, which meant that their responses and their interactions were very different than how they could have been had I shown up differently. But what I'm trying to explain to you here with these two examples of moving house, of my car breaking down, is that how we respond to the situation and how we then deal with it and interact with the people around us in that situation will directly influence the experience that we have. And that's the same as the young lady I mentioned who I had met at that panel discussion, where she recognized very quickly that the way that she was showing up had a direct and immediate impact on the way that people were responding to her. And this wasn't a new job she was going into. It was someone she'd been working for several months. So what can you do to create better experiences day to day for yourself? Have a positive outlook, first of all, and ask yourself, what is the best that I can make of this situation? Similar to what I did with the car example, is, okay, what is the best in this situation? What can I learn from it? And how can I turn it around? So if it's not working to your advantage, if it's not working well for you, or you're having fallouts with people, how can I turn this around? What can I do? Because you can only influence what's in your control. So what is it that you can do to change your role, or the way that you're showing up, or the way that you're behaving? Look for the good in any situation, however bad it is. And also being curious. In that example, I got to be curious about the AA guy and his job and the kind of stories he's got to share about his, his day to day, and also brainstorm with him pros and cons on the different cars that I was interested in or thinking about I could get, right? So look at ways to make the best of any given situation, as opposed to, I could have said to myself, why does this always happen to me? Why do things go wrong? Garages are trying to fleece me. They're always trying to fleece me. The AA are rubbish. BMWs are crap cars. The AA man is just a mechanic, and therefore why should I make the effort to have conversation with him? There's all of this stuff I could have done or thought, which really wouldn't have helped my situation or served me in any possible way. And it's very easy to kind of not notice sometimes when we're in the moment of how we are behaving, because we're behaving based on emotion and what the circumstances that are presented at that time. And sometimes it'll have us getting frustrated, angry, and so forth. And so we react to that. And then the reaction to that creates a snowball effect of everything just getting worse and seeming worse, and snowballing into reactive situations from people, which aren't the outcomes that we really want to experience. And that's how we create our experiences. So here's the thing. What we do is we get to choose to become aware of our internal representations that we're creating of the world based on how we're processing information and experiences. Because that's our subjective reality. It's subjective. It's based on our beliefs, our stories, our experiences, our expectations. And it may not even be close to the objective reality. And that's why you might find that in some cases, you get into a situation, let's say at work, and you're seeing it one way because you're in it and it's seeming like a really bad situation, but somebody looking in from the outside who may be more objective might be able to see it a different way. There may be a positive spin on it. How can you look at this in a different way, a way that will have you managing your emotions more, feeling more like this isn't as bad as it could seem, and how can you then handle it better? So it's about honestly stepping back from a situation at a point in time, something that hasn't gone the way you wanted, isn't working out the way you planned, and look at the role that you are playing in it, and think about how you are showing up, how you are behaving, choices you are making, and how that is directly influencing your situation and your reality. So my invite to you today is to become more aware of the lens that you are applying as you show up in the world. So the lens that you're applying to the world at large, to your situations, your circumstances, and the reality that you're getting to create as a consequence of that. Because here's the biggest takeaway for you today, and you might want to write this down. We can change our reality, in other words, our experiences, day to day, simply by changing our minds. In other words, changing our outlook, the way that we choose to look at things around us, the lens that we look at the world through, the meaning that we put onto situations, to circumstances, to people. And if there are areas of your life in which you are feeling dissatisfied, frustrated, unhappy, then I invite you to give some thought to how you can adjust your lens to create a better outcome for yourself. Until next time, remember to elevate your performance, maximize your potential, and create new possibilities by showing up as the best version of you. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already done so. And if you enjoyed and gained value from today's episode, then do please leave a review telling us your key learnings and what you enjoyed the most. And do please share this podcast with your friends and colleagues so we can spread the word on life leadership, creating a life of choice, freedom, and new possibilities. Connect with me directly on LinkedIn, and if you would like to learn more about how we can work together, either DM me on LinkedIn or email.